Patti Gilford, I think, is an exceptional art consultant who works with a lot of private individuals and a lot of corporate situations. And I've seen, she's used networking media like Facebook really well, which is where I have familiarity with a lot of the work she does. Some of them I had the pleasure of seeing in person, and I think she's really conscientious, and I think she has a lot of integrity, and I think she has a lot of love for the art and the artists. Patti, tell me what the truth is. Wait, I got to unmute you though, too, don't I? All right, Patti, there you go. It's yours.
Well, keep waxing. I think that's absolutely true.
There you go.
Keep going. I think that coming from an art background, I was a painter and a printmaker, and I think that having been, out there making art, and now as the conduit between the corporate and the private world and the art world, I think that I have a certain sensitivity to what's involved in the creative process. And I'm extremely sincere about it. I'm very protective of the artists that I work with, as much as I am protective of my clients as well. So sincerity, yes, very much.
Do you want me to ask you questions, or do you have something you want to say?
I have lots to say, but you can ask me questions.
Well, all right. One of the things that I always wonder about, and that really impresses me about you, is some of the art that you select for various application situations and interiors. Can you take a couple of sort of recent examples, and what does a client say to you? I need something with a horse, or I need something that's yellow, or it needs to match the couch, or what kinds of things how do they give you direction?
Well, the scenario that you just mentioned, we get all of the above. But generally, what's been happening lately, I would say that probably about 65%, 70% of my business is corporate. The rest is private. A lot of the private spins off from corporate, and also the private spins off from a referral network. I would say that in terms of corporate, the kinds of projects that we've been working on lately are different than they were 10, 15 years ago. The corporate clients are really interested in having individualized programs that marry to their corporate interests. So we end up doing a lot of research about who our end user is. We sort of get, we get into the corporate head. We get on their websites, we read about who they are, who their clients are, what
Can you give us a specific example? Is that okay? Is that kosher to do?
Yeah, I can give you an example. We're completing a project right now for a cable company called Panduit, which is, they just built a new LEED-rated headquarter building on the southwest side. They're basically a computer cable company. They came from a site that was just kind of grew exponentially. It had no rhyme or reason. So now they're all consolidated in this new LEED-rated building, and the kinds of things that we built our art program around were things like enabling technology, sustainability. There were things about the environment. So those would be like some kind of, those are some very broad terms. But
is this mostly for internal use to motivate their employees, or do they have a lot of visitors and they're trying to communicate something to the visitors, or both?
It's both. It's definitely both. I mean, there's certain public spaces, and there's private spaces too that they're giving attention to. The other thing that we've done with this is because they are concerned about the employees thinking that this was our program that was just strictly for the public, is that we've done a lot in terms of detailing this program. We have text on all the work. We talk about the artists. We talk about the projects. We talk about the creative process, the inspiration. And those kinds of things are interesting to the employee, are just as interesting to the employees as they are to the visitors. Oops. Hold on. Had a little problem. I'm losing you back and forth.
What's going on?
I lost your face, but I can hear you. So
Okay.
I
still have my face, so I'm okay. Are these corporations, do they tend to want to be fiscally responsible to sort of suggest that they didn't rob the employees of their salary and spend it on art? I mean, I can remember once selling a lot of art to Kraft Foods, like the day after they laid off like 4,000 employees, and I thought, now, whoa, this feels a little bad. You know what I mean? Do they limit their budgets because they don't want to look like they're spending too much on art?
Well, I think what happened is, we're not in the same kind of environment as we were during the, we are certainly not in the same kind of environment. Hi, culture. Hello there.
What? Don't like classical?
I don't know what that was. Everybody's supposed to be muted. Oh, maybe it's over here. I found one person that's not. All right. I'm sorry, Patty.
Okay, we might have a few difficulties here. First of all, the environment in terms of corporate consulting, it's not, in terms of corporate purchasing, it's not the same environment as it was 20 years ago. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There are people, and there's been, it's just started to come back. The last couple of years, everything has been pretty much put on hold. Currently, there's activity again. The budgets tend to be very, very tight. A lot of the programs are phased in over time. They're very cautious about money. They're very cautious about value. We're trying to we're placing more young and emerging artists in collections than we were 10 years ago. And that has a lot to do with price point. It has a lot to do with price point. It's a very different environment. It's not an easy commitment to get a corporation to put in place a corporate art program.
Do you go and pitch them, or are they coming to you?
I go and pitch them.
Fascinating. So a lot of these people you go to, you track them out, you see that they're doing new construction, or some reason to make you hope that they want art, and you go talk to them.
Well, it's a little bit different than that. I would say that a very strong conduit for me is the architecture and the design and the engineering industry. I come from a, I come from a background of, in part, architects. So the language is a very comfortable language for me. The staff, oh, you're doing my website now?
Sure, why not?
Okay. The staff that we, let me, I lost my point when I started looking at my photographs.
Yeah, you started looking at yourself, I know.
I know, I started looking
No,
at
but you were talking about cold calling, or how you get in touch with these folks in your architectural experience.
Wait, where was I? Paul, you put me back. I lost my track.
I was asking you about whether you went to them or they came to you.
Okay. The strong point about my staff, unlike other consulting firms, is that I have a group of people that work with me that are first working artists. Okay, so that they're fantastic problem solvers. Artists are the best problem solvers I could possibly have working for me. The second thing is that I have people that are very good on plan, okay, and also people that are very strong. We're very strong spatially. So when we get a set of plans for a building that's going to be fabricated in 2 years, that's going to go up in 2 years, we can very early stage, if we have a willing client, start to put together an art program for them. An example would be, we did the Elysian Hotel. That was a project that we came on about 3.5 years ago, no, 4 now actually, when the building was under construction. I mean, the foundation had been laid, and we were very, very early stage. So we could talk about lighting, we could talk about blocking, we could talk about weight, if we wanted to do something with sculpture. We could make those arrangements at a very, very early stage. So that group of people, design, architects, engineers, are a very strong conduit for me. To cold call on an end user, there's other consulting firms that do that. I don't do that. Unless I have a very strong lead into a corporation or a very key person that I know will be willing to listen and is interested in art, what I cold call.
I'm going to ask you a loaded question. How do you structure your charges? How do you structure, I mean, it seems like you do a fair amount of upfront work. The compensation might be whimsical or not linear. And, I mean, are you charging a fee or are you charging a percentage? Is it both, a mix? What?
I would say that what I do, oh, I'm losing you again, but I'll be back. What I do now is I charge them a retainer. And I ask them, when I walk away from a job, whether it be corporate or private, I need to have some kind of engagement or some kind of commitment so that I have proof that they are really interested in using my services. It's very easy for people to say, oh, just go ahead and put some images together and send them to me. That's what we do professionally. That's what we're trained to do. That's what people pay us to do. And I expect to be paid for it. And I ask for a retainer. And I will use the retainer against a certain amount of hours. I'll put a proposal together for them, which documents the services that we're, you know, what we intend on doing, the amount of time. I'll cap it, you know, so we don't exceed. But if I can't get somebody to give me a retainer, and let you know, again, there's always, you know, some play in that. I mean, there's some clients that I do things for free because they're old clients, or there's some clients that I do things without asking a fee because of a relationship or something. But generally speaking, I get a retainer. And then what I do is that it covers me to the early proposal stage.
Okay.
And if it doesn't go through, and I write this is all in writing, I'm at least covered for my time. And if it does go through, I will back it out from the total project.
How many jobs are you comfortable working on at one time?
Remember, I do a combination of corporate and private, so they take different parts of my, you know, they use different parts of my brain, so to speak. It's not unusual for me to have, you know, 10, 12 projects going on at once, but they're not all active at the same time.
Right. That's a lot.
You know, there's some corporate projects that we do a phase and then we might not do anything for a year. There's some private projects where we might place a piece and then psychologically the client isn't in the mood to buy and they put us on hiatus for 5 months or 6 months. But, you know, I've got all these sort of files going and these projects going, and as I'm looking at art and sourcing, I'm thinking about my end users. I'm thinking about my clients. So if they're on hiatus, I'm ready when they're ready.
Where does most of your art come from? Are you going to galleries predominantly, or are you working directly with some artists who are not through galleries?
I do anywhere I can get it. I mean, and I don't mean that facetiously. Yes, I mean, first of all, I mean, I'm very, in terms of getting artwork, I've been very Chicago-centric. So I try to buy from Chicago.
Are most of your clients within a certain radius of Chicago?
My clients are predominantly here. When I get involved with corporate and sometimes private, there'll be satellite offices in other locations. I'm doing work right now in California. We've done it in Texas. We've done it in Boston. We've done it in New York. We've done it all over the country. It's the same thing with private clients too. Sometimes they have you know, a home here, and then they have another home somewhere else. You know, I've got my eyes on, you know, doing some work overseas right now. But I would say that for the last 35 years that I've been doing this, 35, that it's been primarily Chicago-based.
When you're working in other cities, are you working with local artists in those areas, or are you still drawing from Chicago as you can?
There's some jobs that have a regional flair to them. You know, in other words, you know, we did some work in Boston, and the corporation really wanted Boston-based artists. So we had to open up, you know, our eyes and, you know, source that way. Every client's different, Paul. You know.
I know, but these guys don't all know.
Okay. All right, you guys.
when you work with a gallery, they're giving you a discount, and that enables you to make a profit there, typically?
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much how it works. And the way, you know, I think what's happened is that I feel that, you know, the art world is, I don't know why I was doing that. I'll be back to you in a minute on the art world is a world of relationships. And, you know, I think Tricia was talking about that too. And I've developed relationships with galleries, with artists, with the states, with auction houses, you know, for years. And so, you know, I'm as good as my resources. And yeah, as good as my resources and as good as my ability to create, so that my projects aren't cookie cutter. And that's the interesting thing about what we do, is that the projects aren't cookie cutter. You know, we try to, the learning curve for me, there's always a learning curve for me, because we challenge ourselves frequently. But back to your questions in terms of that, wherever I need to go to satisfy my client's needs, I do. But on the other hand, you know, there's a lot of artists in Chicago that also have representation in other cities. There's artists in New York that have representation, that in other cities have representation here. So if I can utilize the Chicago system, whether it be the galleries or the artists, and it serves my purpose in terms of satisfying my clients, I do.
In the past 12, 18 months, this is a loaded question too, what percentage of the artists you put in on your jobs did not come through a gallery?
I would say 40%, at least 40%.
And all right, so these are artists. Do you work with these artists on a recurring basis? Many of them.
I work with them on project-to-project basis. No, I mean we have a huge resource file, and if the work is appropriate for my needs, for what I'm hired to do, I will use it. But I must say, you know, like there's certain artists that I could plug in every time.
But then it gets more cookie cutter.
But I don't want to do that, you know. But, you know, I mean, there's artists that I've used on multiple times. But, you know, I'm dealing with human beings. The work changes and evolves, and I'm not representing them. I'm really representing the client when I'm out there. You know, I can't say that you know, I don't represent any artists. I represent clients. But my source pool is tremendous. And
you know, there's an American Association of Art Advisors or something like that, and one of their tenets is that you not own any inventory, right?
Right.
That's always struck me as curious as hell.
Well, you know, the notion, I mean, when I first started, well, I started out doing private curatorial work, and then I was dealing and doing consultant works with works on paper, with a lot of experimental process. I was really interested in that. And I remember hearing about that conflict. I mean, you know, at this juncture in my business, I do not have inventory. I do not have any inventory, and this started to change about 6 years ago. And one of the reasons is that not just, you know, maintaining it, ensuring it, taking care of it. I wanted, that became costly. But also I wanted to present to my certain kinds of clients that I was an unbiased party. And that's the theory behind, you know, not having inventory. You know, then you've got a moneyed interest or a particular, whatever, political or whatever interest, and you're going to push what you own. I don't own any inventory. I'm just free as a bird.
Yeah, that's Patti. How do you feel about the artists in this workshop course sending you information so that you can be familiar with what they're doing?
I invite it. I ask them to do it totally. Do not send me anything hard. Just send me a note. You know, you can email me, give me a website to go to, and I will let you know that I've been on the website. It won't just go into a vacuum. You'll get a note. A lot of times what we do is we'll go on a website, I'll archive the images, and if I need it, I'll find it. And I will find it. You know, we archive hundreds of images, and we have them, you know, in folders with particular focus or themes or a certain way of working, and we do go into and we utilize those folders all the time.
How often do you bring artists to a presentation?
Rarely. Very rarely.
How often are you commissioning specific works of art instead of buying art that exists?
We're doing some projects right now that have some very big commissions. You have to have the right audience. You have to have the right client.
They'd have to trust more.
Right. And that's tough. That's really, really tough. I mean, it's a lot of hand-holding. I'm very careful about the artists that I use in commissioning, extremely careful about who I use. I need, you know, corporate, and I'm using corporate, I don't want to denigrate because this is made up of intelligent people. A lot of these people just aren't, they haven't had the exposure. So they're very, when I do commission things, they want to see a lot of information in front of them. So
for a specific wall, you might give them more than 3 choices?
I would give them 3, you know, I would give them 3 choices. They would pick an artist. And then I would pick an artist whose work is in sync with what I need to have done. I would not pick an artist whose work is not in sync and ask them to do something that is out of their comfort zone, because ultimately I won't get a great painting.
What percentage of the art you place is paintings?
I would say lately, maybe 30.
30. What's the rest? I thought that was going to be higher. What are the rest?
No, I would say I have a lot of works on paper, a lot of drawings, a lot of photo-based work.
Very little new media, or how much new media?
Very, very little. Very little. We try over and over. We have a very, very difficult time with that.
How much abstract imagery versus realism, or closer to realism?
In the last couple of years, I would say that maybe 60%, 65% work that's referential, and the other 35% abstract.
Somebody asked, and I think it's an interesting question, how do you label the folders? What are the categories? I mean, if it's abstract, you know, this is where those questions were leading to. How many different kinds of folders might you have, and what might they be labeled?
Well, we have an intern right now that's helping me. Yeah, I mean, we have, you know, a lot of folders that are, you know, that we archive that are under things like, you know, I mean, painting, sculpture, works on paper, new media. You know, the print works I have in folders that are specific to the process, because I work with a lot of process. And then I have, but in terms of like just painting, we might have categories that are figurative, we might have categories that are figurative, still life. We have one that says like Brave New World. We have one that says Chicago. We have one that says, no, there was one that might say still life. There might be one that says, you know, urban. There's one that might say rural. So, I mean, that's the kind of breakdown that we use.
Okay, cool. I noticed that Christopher has a question or has his hand up, and I'm going to unmute Christopher. And I don't see, I mean, I see that Katrin still has her hand up from an hour ago. Maybe take it down, or maybe you have a question. I'm unmuting Christopher, and if others of you have questions, throw your hand up in the air. Christopher.
Thank you. Hi, Patti.
Hi.
We've talked about a spectrum of different types of work in this course, with an emphasis on doing work that distinguishes you. Tricia just talked about kind of pushing the edge of the field. We heard about that from Michael Darling. What would you say in terms of the spectrum of works that you select, them on one end being decorative and on the other end being, you know, really trying to push the edge of the field of art? Where do you think most of your selections fall?
Okay, that's a good question. Honestly, I would say that let's break it up into two kind of sectors here, which is in corporate. In the last 3 or 4 years, the majority of the work that we place is referential work, and on the spectrum that you gave me, it's going to be in the middle, and it's going to be fairly conservative. Okay. Now, when I get into private use, and that's not to say, I mean, yes, I do have some clients that are willing to push more, but push real strong left to center, very far and few between. I have a trading firm that I deal with, and they're willing to, but they're not willing to go into new media. They won't go into video, but they are open. They're open. And that's a little bit of a diamond in the rough. In terms of private, that's where I have the chance to push a little bit more. I mean, I do have clients that are very traditional, and, you know, they want, you know, beautiful figure drawings and, you know, photo-based work that has, you know, a certain kind of content that they can see and understand. And then I have clients privately that are willing to push the envelope a little bit more. But I would still say that it's not real far left of center. Does that answer you?
So do you think that do you try to kind of pull people along out of their comfort zone, along a trajectory, or are you? I mean, I know you're serving your clients, and
no. You're asking a great. You're asking like a great question. Myself and my staff try to push them as far left to center as we possibly can. You know, as far as we know that as we can, without alienating them. You know, so we have to be able to kind of psychologically read our clients, understand who they are, where they're coming from. But when we give them options, we make sure that we put together a package where there are things that push them, because we want them to buy things that they can eventually, that they'll learn from over time.
Damn right.
And we get resistance. We do have resistance. People go back to what they're comfortable in. In terms of decorative work that works, first of all, I don't have a problem with the word decoration. I mean, these lines of demarcation in terms of decoration, whatever, I just don't buy in it. I buy into work that's either really good or work that's not good, you know. But in terms of decorative work, and we'll use that as a term meaning there's like one read and there's not much more. I mean, maybe that would be a, you know, like it works in just plain formal terms. You know, the color's nice, the movement's nice, the spaces between, you know, and that's there's not anything more than just kind of you know, compositionally. You know, we do have clients that we always have a fallback position. And the fallback could be some work like that. And that's what I call like my strikeout zone. Like if I don't, when I go in with a client, if I don't hit or make a connection with them the first time out, or perhaps maybe a second time, I won't connect with them. And there are art advisory firms that deal in decorative art, as we'll call it. And I'm not interested in that. You know, I'm not interested in franchising and having Patti Gilford Fine Arts in every city, and I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in projects that are, oops, I lost you there. Oops. I'll keep talking and I'll find you back again. I'm interested in projects that push me, push my staff, so that I can continually, so that I keep learning. Or otherwise, I'm just, you know, otherwise I'm just sort of I'm not really doing a service. I'm not educating, you know, and I'm not educating my clients, and I'm not learning anything, and that's no fun. Yeah.
I want to tell a story that relates tangentially to what Patty's been saying and what Christopher asked. I've had one job where I worked as an art consultant, and it happened to have been huge. And it took me 4 years, and it was fabulous, and I took care of the art for McCormick Place, and I narrowed down, you know, like 500 artists to show them 33 for 30 locations, or 30 artists that we were going to choose. And one of them, and they agreed with me on every single artist except one. And that artist was named A-I, and last name Kajima, K-A-J-I-M, Kajima, K-A-J-I-M-A. And she would made these fabulous tapestries, quilts out of found materials, and would go to like the Salvation Army, etc., and buy towels and pillowcases and sheets and shower curtains, and she would sew these configurations in together, somewhere maybe as big as 10 by 20 feet. And they said, no, we don't want her. And I said, you're kidding me. This stuff is outstanding. It's fabulous. Why don't you want her? And they said, we don't want her because she uses a lot of Disney imagery. And Orlando is our biggest competitor as a convention center, and we don't want anybody thinking about Orlando. The moral of the story is that if you submit your art to a competition or send it to an art consultant or a gallery, and they say no, don't take it personally. You know, it's about agreement, and it's about how it fits their purposes. It's not about how great your art is, how sexy you are, how handsome you are. It's about how the art fits their needs. And I think that's really an important story. Patty, a question was raised about, you know, I mean, let's say an artist works with a gallery in San Francisco, but they live in Chicago, and their paintings in San Francisco sell for $10,000, and they're used to getting $5,000 or $6,000 for those paintings. And you're working directly with them. How are they getting compensated? How are you charging for the piece?
Let's see. First of all, you know, the artists that have representation elsewhere, most of the times we really make sure that we don't violate that relationship.
Correct, of course.
I don't backdoor galleries. I mean, that's just
no, it's too small in art world. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do anything too nasty in the art world because it's damn small.
Yeah, it's small. You know, what we do, and we've had that situation come up. I mean, you know, I talk with the artists about it, and a lot of times I'll end up working with them. We'll keep the retail, put the retail the same, so that their pricing is consistent, and I'll work with them on a 50-50 basis many times. Sometimes I don't work with, you know, sometimes 50-50, sometimes 40. I've worked with some artists at 30. I've worked with a few artists at 20 directly.
So you're taking 20, not they're taking 20, right?
Right, I'm taking 20.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But we try to keep the end price consistent. You know, it's not good when you have a client that buys something for $10,000 in one part of the country, and they think that they can go straight to the artist and buy it for half the price. And I know that's and I understand that that's a difficult situation. I mean,
I found it really difficult at a gallery and having it work internationally.
Yeah. Internationally, many of the artists that we work with don't have exclusives with the galleries. They're not exclusive. They've got representation in Europe somewhere, and they're free. They have maybe representation in New York. They have an agreement that's has certain boundaries to it, and they're free to do whatever they want in Chicago. The majority of the artists that I work with that have those kinds of connections, they're very consistent in terms of their pricing.
I think it's important, to the extent that you can, that your prices are the same in different locations or venues, And as an extension of that also, if you don't have a gallery and your work sells for, let's say, $5,000, and all of a sudden you do get a gallery, the price shouldn't really change much. Maybe your reputation's a little higher because you're with a more reputable gallery, so what was $5,000 might be now $6,000, but you're probably only going to get half of that as opposed to previously you got all of it. And you better make sure that the gallery, we'll discuss this in other webinars, you better make sure that the gallery is doing something for the money they're earning off of your art. I noticed that Joanne had a question. I'm going to go find out where she went.
Okay.
Here you are. And Joanne, you are unmuted now, and you can ask your question.
My question is, how often, or does it ever happen, where you have a corporate client and either someone sees a piece there, or the owner of the company or whatever wants to contact an artist? Does that happen much through you?
Okay, so what happens? So what you're asking is that a client of mine would see some work in a gallery or in an exhibition.
No. If people see the work that's in the corporate place.
Oh, okay.
You often get inquiries about the artist through it being displayed there.
I would say that, yeah, it does happen. It's not a regular occurrence, but I can tell you that, for example, on this Elysian hotel project that we did, that's a venue where the way that the art is displayed in there, it's a feature of the hotel, and everybody that works there knows a lot about those. They're educated. We put together a lot of information for them and put together sort of a tri-fold guide. There's guests that come in and that do ask. Some of it we've had maybe one or two that have actually consummated in some kind of relationship, but we do get inquiries. We've also had people that contact us and want to know where the hotel tells them to contact us. And that's the same thing with the corporation. They're invited to call us. The hotel has been one that I've actually, as I mentioned, had gotten clients. In corporate, not too often. But what I do get from corporate is that if I have a very satisfied CEO, for example, and I do end up working with them in a corporate relationship, many times I end up working with them privately. So it's about the art, it's about the relationship, and then it goes into a private relationship. So
that's one of the buzzwords we hear a lot in this class is, it's about relationships, and we hear that a bunch. Excuse me. I don't see any more hands up. Anybody have a question? All right, I'm going to unmute everybody, and it's going to get ridiculous again, and we'll see. Somebody's going to chime in. I just know it. Anybody have a question? Oh, I think we just tuned in Africa. No questions here, huh? I can't hear anybody. I'm muting everybody. Wrong button. Muting everybody. Unmuting Patty. All right.
here.
All right. I hope we get some more. You guys can write me questions also if you want. You know, you can put them in the chat thing. I'll see them there, or you can raise your hand. What's the most fun out of this? Where do when do you get your jollies? I mean, is it when the check shows up, or is it when you see it on the wall, or is it when it looks good in the photograph, or is it when you fall asleep? What?
I think the most fun is that when we go in to do programming, for whether it's private or corporate, and we bring those things that we consider to be a challenge for the client, that we call like our left of center, project, and we actually can place some of the work. I mean, I think that between myself and my associates, my staff, we're looking at so much art, and we want our clients to buy work that's challenging and layered and evocative, and we think that will have some longevity in terms of their learning. So when I can make that kind of connection, make it really I like that a lot. There's another part that I enjoy too, which is that being able to read my client. So I sort of make it into a game. When we go into presentations, I like to connect before. I like to make that connection with people and know that I'm their sort of visual psychologist, and that I read the situation appropriately, and that I was able to network into this huge resource pile of art worldwide and select things that are meaningful to them. So if I can make that connection and they're enthusiastic, accountability is really big for me. If I have clients that take ownership of the art and that are proud about it and that talk about it and that defend it, and I use it, defend is a big deal, and they can defend it, that is a win-win for me. That feels great.
Do you feel like you fit in a certain niche as a corporate or as a curator or an art consultant? Or, I know other art consultants in Chicago, and I've run up against Thea Westreich a couple of times and, tried to sell something to her clients, and the client would call her and they'd go, oh no, that artist isn't God, I didn't anoint them yet, or something. I mean, do you fit into a certain bracket, do you think? And are there jobs that are too big or jobs that are too little for you? Or tell me.
No, I don't feel that there are jobs that are too big, or in terms of, here's my feeling about who we are. We are a little bit different than some consultants, because this is particular to corporate, and in some ways maybe particular to residential work as well. I think the value that we add that's a little bit different is that I'm very spatial. And so I am, in addition to going through the editing process of finding art that I think is worthwhile to show my clients, I'm also very concerned about how the work is read, how the work integrates into space so that it can
you're also interested in how different works of art relate to one another in that space. You clearly are.
Very important to me. The dialogue, the intervals, the way that you approach something, the sight lines, the lighting. I want the art to be featured, and I want that work to be maximized, in terms of its placement. So I'm very, very thoughtful about that. So that's one set of criteria that that when I select work for a project, it has to work for me in terms of those spatial terms. It also has to work with me in terms of integrity in the making, in terms of the uniqueness, the work itself, how I feel about the work in terms of the concepting.
That's all evident from looking at the pictures you have of the art that you've placed. I don't think I could have verbalized it, but now that you say it, and I've looked at the things that you've done, I go, yep, that's definitely true.
So that, I would say that I'm a little bit of a diamond in the rough, you know, and I think it's because I have a very strong kind of architectural, spatial component, and it plays pretty strongly in what we do. There's other consultants out there that, you know, they provide for their clients like a list of the hot names or the things that have been blessed and by the critics and the so forth. And it's not that I ignore that work at all, but I'm sensitive to the work in terms of its that it's not trendy, that it has longevity, and that it can be placed properly.
It's funny because I always imagine it being the first song on the record, but the way Bob...
I hear it. I can't figure out where it's coming from, though.
Much more than event.
Who's that? Everybody's muted, except whoever Lucille is. I don't know, Lucille. I've been real tempted to kick this person out because it's not a name that I recognize, and everybody else I do recognize. Patti, we've spoken about relationships, and you know, I'm assuming that you have relationships with a number of artists, and some of those artists, you know, legitimately on a first-name basis. And some of them have a familiarity with their artwork. I mean, how does an artist go about having a relationship with you? I guess this is above and beyond just sending in their URL.
The relationships, what happens with me generally is that, you know, like I said, I'm happy to receive an email. I will respond to them, and I will look at websites. In terms of other ways that artists have relationships with me, of course, when I work with somebody on a project, we start to develop a rapport and a relationship and so forth. So the relationships build, you know, on the work that we do together. You know, there's a lot of artists that I work with who network me to their friends. You know, there's artists that I work with on a job, or there's artists that even I haven't worked with on a job, but I love their work, and I've had conversations with them about their work, and they'll network me to somebody else. So,
you're doing the same kind of thing that they're doing, so that, you know, I mean, we're each recommending each other.
Yeah. And it keeps me, with that, it keeps me fresh. You know, the people that work for me, you know, I have people that are a little, you know, different generations. And one of the reasons why I have them is because they are working artists and, or have been, and they, you know, network into that group. And it keeps me in touch with what's going on.
That's smart. How many people do you have working with you on how many people do you have working with you on an ongoing basis? Employee types.
Like 2 or 3. It could be 4 at the most, and two. You know, it could be as little as 2.
Cool. All right. I noticed that Kimberly has a question, and I'm going to unmute her. It's a good thing I have all these names in front of me in alphabetical order. Otherwise, I'd never find anybody. Okay, Kimberly, what's up?
Hi, Patti. My question is, if I've worked with a consultant here in Chicago, and my work was resold to an interior decorator for a significant amount more than what I sold it to the consultant, and someone who was passing through the interior decorator studio saw my work, saw the price, and contacted me directly, letting me know that they didn't feel that they could afford the work out of the decorator studio and wondered if I could sell anything to them for less. And I don't know if it's my responsibility to redirect them to the consultant or direct them to the interior decorator, or if I just resell to them at a price that I feel is fair, because I don't want to burn any bridges. And I'm just wondering if you have any input.
You asked a great, I mean, again, this is a really good question. What happens a lot, you know, interior designers work in different ways. Some work on a retainer. and their clients know the percentage that they add on to the purchases of our work. Okay, so that's one scenario. There's another scenario where I work with interior designers that add on a percentage, and you don't even know what the percentage is. So they're marked up, and the client pays. The client pays, like, let's say over retail. Okay. You know, there is that risk when you're dealing with this market. They do try to, you know, a lot of people do try to circumvent that and go to the artist directly. And it's hard to say to an artist, don't sell to them. I mean, it's tough enough making art and trying to make a living making art. What we've done is, let me think about this. When this has happened, we have really good relationships with the artists a lot, you know, and they'll call me. And this hasn't happened in a really long time because the designers that we work with are very, very upfront with their clients. So I haven't had that happen in quite some time, but I remember in the earlier years that happened. And I have the artist call and kind of take me through the scenario, and then I've gone to bat for them. I've tried to find out what the pricing is because I don't want them to stick out their foot in their mouth. You know, I want the pricing to be consistent.
Also, you know, I think that the artist has to take responsibility for his or her career. And too many artists, I think, are a little bit laid back or feel like I'll make the art, I'll sell it for a given price, and that's the extent of my involvement. I think you should take more involvement and more responsibility than that. I don't know, I mean, when you had this consultant or whomever resell the work for a higher price, I think that was wrong, and I think you should have chastised them for it. And I think you should have notified the person who acquired it and told them that those are not your prices and that your prices are in this sort of league and that you're uncomfortable with what happened, that you're not in a position to reimburse them or do anything about it. But if they wanted to do it right, they should work with you or they should work with someone who's representing you honestly.
Well, that would be, you know.
That'd be one approach.
That would be really bold. And I think
I think you guys are artists. You should be bold.
Yeah,
you know?
no, I think that's good. That's good advice. I have since worked with the consultants, and I don't know if it was on the end of the consultants or maybe if it's the interior designers that have marked it up.
Right.
Well, interior designers frequently don't have the same kind of investment in art and quality and relationships that art consultants do. Interior designers frequently are just after a one-time sale and move on. That isn't to say they are all like that, but there's more of them like that than there are art consultants like that, I think.
Right. I think that, you know, the better designers are the ones that are very, very upfront with their clients. You know, if they're going to mark up a certain percentage, their clients know that there's going to be a markup. And I've had designers like that where I've said, you know, you guys, you know, I'm buying this. If I'm buying it from Gallery, say I'm buying it at 10 or 20% off. And if you mark up on top of this, it's going to exceed retail. So, you know, and they said my clients are comfortable because this is a service that I provide. If they're upfront with it, that's fine, as long as it's out there, you know. And then I've had designers, you know, not recently, as I mentioned, that, you know, don't want to be upfront with their clients, and their clients don't ask. And they just are into making the money, and they're adding on whatever percentage they want. You know, so
I mean, I think you can tell that Patti brings honesty, integrity, and concern to this ball game. And I think those are the kinds of people that we want to work with, you know, where you don't feel like you have to keep looking over your shoulder to make sure you're not getting screwed. I mean, I think Patti is doing it properly, and that's why we're talking to her. I think we could get this wrapped up momentarily. I don't see anybody. If somebody has a question, I'm hoping you all know how to raise your hands. And I saw that somebody had a question a moment ago, but they've left since then. And I don't see any more questions in the chat box. I'm going to unmute everybody for a second here and see if anybody has a question. And there's lots of that. Somebody make noise if you want to ask a question.
Hi, Patti.
Wait a minute. All right, wait. Stop, Penny. Stop. I'm muting everybody. I'm going to unmute. It's nice when I unmute everybody. It doesn't include me. I've unmuted Penny, and I'm unmuting Patti. Penny, go ahead.
How often do you make studio visits?
I don't make them often because I don't have the time. But I want to qualify that a little bit, because if there's a project that I'm working on and I've got a lead on an artist that I'm really, really interested in, and I will spend a lot of time on the website to start. But before I would go forward with them, I will make a studio visit. The reason why I don't make them frequently is because when I make a studio visit, it kind of puts me back to when I was making art. And I'm not cavalier about studio visits. I really spend a lot of time, you know, and I really want to understand the work. And I don't get out of studio visits in less than an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Me neither. You know, I figure it's 90 minutes, and I feel like I'm investing my soul, and I'm trying to be really honest with the person and give them some constructive feedback. And I couldn't do more than one a day. I mean, I do, you know, and I do probably some every week, but I love it, but, you know, it's relevant to what I'm doing more than it needs to be for Patti, and it's an effort, you know? I mean, I don't know.
Sometimes the internet doesn't show the work in its best light, you know, a photo.
Oh, that's totally true. The internet's really a compromise for looking at artwork. There's, you know, you really need to see it in person.
Right, but I have to say this, is that, you know, we're resourcing a lot of jobs at the same time. I think that after so many years of doing this, I think we have a pretty good feeling for what, you know, yes, I mean, if the work looks good to me on the internet, I know the chances are that when I get in front of it and experience the work, that I'm going to have a different read and it's even going to be better.
Yeah, invariably, because you give credit to stuff and then you see it, you know. And if you're familiar with an artist, I mean, like if you see an Ed Ruscha painting, for example, or Elizabeth Murray, you know what the surface is like, you know what the textures are like, and you attribute that to an image that you haven't seen if you're looking at it online. But, you know, it is more difficult with artists whose work you've never seen in the flesh.
No, but I mean, when we do get involved in a project with them, we look at the work. We have to, you know. You know, we present many times to clients. We do a lot of it in printed. We do a lot of it, you know, digitally, and we're not schlepping work out to the sites. I mean, sometimes if the work is really hard to read, we'll bring a piece with us to a site. But, you know, many times, you know, if we print up something to bring to a client, we'll do a visit or have a conversation with the artist or have them come in and kind of look at the printouts and just make sure that the work looks accurate. But studio visits are, they take a lot out of me because I give a lot to them. You know? Yeah.
Totally. Hey, before we wrap this thing up, there are people who've participated in tonight's webinar, so to speak, a la carte, you know, where you've participated on a one-time basis. You guys are entitled to ask questions also. I mean, this is like, we're here for all of you. So if you are one of those kind, I see that Monica has a question, and I'm going to let her ask it. And others of you, I mean, Monica just signed up a little bit ago, and if there are others of you like that, you may ask a question as well. Monica, you are now unmuted.
Thank you, Paul. I hope you can hear me. My question basically was, I did contact you, Patti. I appreciate it. I heard back via intermail that you had looked at my website, and I wonder what a good way is, or how often you would like to be updated about exhibitions or new work that might be useful to you.
Okay. And you know what? And first of all, Monica, I do remember your work, actually. Because it was fairly recent when you sent it. And we do have it archived. But in terms of the updating, I would say that, you know, if there was an email that you sent after that initial package, 4 months, 5 months, would probably be just fine. We've got I think we have a pretty good, what you sent me was a good beginning foundation in terms of knowing about your work, and the work changes, evolves, you keep, the process continues. I think that if you were to send us some images every, it's 4 or 5 months, or when you feel that there's something really special. I mean, to bombard me with images like every week or so, that wouldn't be a good move.
That would be counterproductive.
Yeah, that would not be
But by the same tokens, they should probably update you every 5 to 7 months or every 6 months, regardless, just so that they're still active and their work is growing and maturing and progressing, right?
Well, that would be great. I mean, as I said, I keep files, and for a lot of artists that don't update me, and I have to get on the web. I really have to do the research, and so if you can make that process a little bit easier for me, that certainly is helpful. But when we start selecting artists, we get on those websites, we look at the work really carefully. We try to get we try to really get a sense of it, and then we go the next step. If it's something appropriate, then we'll contact you and, begin some kind of a relationship.
There's something that's been not quite said here all night that just dawns on me, and that is that you guys should have pretty damn good websites. Okay. And there's some artists in this group, I believe, that don't have any website. I suppose no website is better than a lousy website, but I think you should have a good website, and I don't think the information should be like older than 5 or 6 months. And there are plenty of, there's a website company called Other People's Pixels, and I think we've spoken about this. We can chat about this on the chat room also about people that do websites. And at some point in the future, I doubt it's this class, I'm going to have a web designer participate in this and use their insights. But I think you need to have a good website. And maybe we should look at each other's websites and say who's as good, I guess we should compliment those that we like. But it's pretty obvious that a website is integral to how Patti functions and looking at your information. And if you can't provide that to her, you're not going to be competing as equally as those who can.
That is absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we had somebody recently that didn't have a website, and he dropped a portfolio off at our office, and I can't take the time to have a discussion about the work, and I had no point of reference. I knew very little. I'm then responsible for the work. The website is critical. There's a thing in my office that, almost with artists that don't have websites, we sort of wonder about the artist.
I mean, like, are they serious?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's really important.
All right, this is your last chance to ask a question before I let Patti, before I go to sleep. It's getting to be Paul's bedtime. I'm going to unmute everybody for a second here and see if anybody else wants to fire up a question. Okay, you guys, you're all unmuted. Echo time. Cool. All right, I'm muting everybody again. Did you want to ask something? I can't see that. Wait a minute. I'm unmuting Amber. Amber, did you want to ask something?
No. Now, I'm kind of curious. It's not a very important question, but how much art have you collected as an art consultant? I mean, we're looking at these white walls behind you.
Oh yeah. I'm in my. If you were I'm at home. If you were in my living room, it would be different. It's really interesting. I collect. I buy. But for me, because I handle and look at so much work on a daily basis, for me to want to own something, to have ownership, is a really big deal for me. So when I buy something, it's real. I mean, sometimes I do, buy things impulsively, but I'm really thoughtful about it. I know a lot about the work. I'm really interested in the artist. the things in my collection I've had for years because I think that they've been rich enough for me to learn from. I'm particular. I mean, I have my special interests. Issue art, issues with my mother, issues with myself. I got a bunch of issue art. I've collected a bunch of work that with artists that I've worked with on projects who become really special to me. I'm very supportive of what they do. There's a lot of people that teach photography at Columbia who were very important to me on a project that I worked on, and I got to know the work really well, and I purchased some of that from my own collection. It's an ongoing thing. I mean, I'm always looking, but it's one thing to handle and look at it, and it's one thing to own it. And so ownership is, that work is really special to me.
That's interesting. When I had an art gallery, I felt like I had a library card. I could take art home and, bring it back to the gallery a month or so later. After I sold the gallery, I started collecting a lot of Chicago art, and I started buying it. And a lot of my motivation was to, help people that I cared about. Some of it was the ownership, but ownership isn't as important to me as helping out others, and I think that, if 5 or 6 people buy your artwork a year that wouldn't otherwise, that can totally change your life. And, I like to try and be a part of that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Paul. I think that's what happens with me sometimes, when I start to build a relationship with an artist on a particular project, I get engaged with the work, but I also get engaged with their lives too, and their stories, and I try to be supportive.
Awesome. Let's wrap this up. Patti, I think you've been awesome. I think you really bring a lot of integrity to what you do, and I think it makes you special. That said, I think that there are other art consultants in Chicago and in the world who are also special, and there's a bunch of them who aren't. But, I think Patti's exemplary, and I think those of you who are in other cities and work with art consultants or want to work with art consultants can follow Patti's lead and suggestions. And if the people you're working with there don't measure up to the kind of standard that I think Patti has established for us, maybe you should look elsewhere, because there are people out there who are as good as she is and who would be a pleasure to work with like she is. So, Patti, thank you a ton. All of you guys, thank you so much for attending. We're meeting again Monday. Monday we have Katie Rashid who's joining us, and Katie used to work for Rona Hoffman Gallery in Chicago and is now working for a significant gallery in New York. And we're meeting with Deborah Hand, and Deborah is essentially a self-made, self-done artist who doesn't work with galleries and does quite well on her own, and we're going to learn from some of her insights. I thank you all for participating tonight, and the Wesley Kindler interview discussion, I'm going to try and get that online tomorrow, but it may take me longer than that. I will get it up eventually. Everybody, thank you very much. I've had a great evening. I hope you have too. I'm going to close the meeting now. Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.